And we'll start off day 2 of the Innovation Summit. Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing? Fine? Good? It's very bright, cheerful. It was awesome watching the pitch contest last night. That was so energizing and cool and demoralizing for me personally because I haven't achieved much, but that was really cool to see these great people with great ideas doing amazing things. So that was very, very cool, and we'll talk a little bit about that this morning. But we've got some great stuff for the program this morning and really amazing programs happening all through the day, so we're going to get rolling on it. So welcome back. First of all, I'm Andy Klein, and I am the marketing manager at Alaska Seaplanes, and really happy that Brian asked me at the last second to MC. No, we had a kind of a last second substitution that had to happen in between Sierra and myself. We're splitting the MC duties, and it's really great to be able to do it, so I appreciate being asked. Thanks, Brian, for asking. I want to thank a number of our hosts and sponsors this morning, so another thanks out, as we're going to be doing throughout the summit, to our hosts here, the University of Alaska Southeast. Beautiful room, and what a great venue for us to be able to do this in. And we want to thank our platinum sponsors, Sea Alaska and Alaska Airlines. And also a special thanks to this year's main stage sponsor, which is Upskilled Evolution. And what a cool story this is. Upskilled Evolution, from pitch contestant and startup in January 2022 to now our Innovation Summit main stage sponsor in 2023. I think that's such a cool story. Upskilled Evolution is led by Chastine Lynch and Bailey Kaler. Is it back here? And they're back in that there, right there. Hello. And they're an Alaskan recruitment and staffing agency focusing on building employment by providing training and skills for those looking for jobs and connecting them with the right fit businesses and careers. It's a true example of what you can gain from attending the Innovation Summit. So what a cool story. And you can learn more and connect with Chastain and Bailey at their booth upstairs in the Innovation Lounge. They're up there, and they have one of the coolest little swag giveaways I've seen yet. Delicious cookies with their logo in it. It's very, very cool. So I'm going to steal that idea for the next conference I go to. I want to congratulate also, as we were talking about the pitch contest last night, the pitch contest winners. The Judge's Choice Award winner was New Earth Fungi. That was Alana. And what a cool thing that was. Just presented, so impressive, the process that she goes by to grow these different varieties of mushrooms, the ideas that she has about providing fresh mushrooms and fresh produce to Southeast Alaska, so very cool. And then the People's Choice Award was Sitkana, and that was Lance presenting for Sitkana, and that was, again, an amazing way of potentially providing energy to rural Alaska using tidal power. So very cool stuff. The thing that was so striking about the pitch contest, and anyone here who attended it, was you could have picked any of the presentations and they were absolutely spot on. And they were a great representation of covering these different sectors of our economy in Southeast Alaska and in Alaska in general. So between, from recruitment to energy, produce, tourism, every single sector seemed like it was covered. It was very, very cool. So hey, we've got a poll everywhere question. So our poll everywhere question number 3, is it on the board here? It's going to be on the board. Gabe's going to get it up for us here. This is kind of a trick question, because really all of these answers would be correct, really, because they would all be awesome. But where is the after party being hosted on Thursday? Tonight from 5 to 8. Is it here, UAS? You can text that number if it is. Forbidden Peak, text that number. Copa or Forno Rosa? So the weather for Forno Rosa, that would be a little rough, I would think. But so I'm just giving you a hint that it might, but it's a vote of confidence if you vote for that. So anyway, we'll get back to that here in a minute. So let me just go over today's agenda, and got a full agenda today, and thanks again for attending. So we're going to have remarks from Governor Dunleavy. And following those, we're going to hear a keynote from Stephen Trimble. And then we're going to learn about carbon storage opportunities from Haley Payne and Nick Fulford. We're going to observe a master carver working. and we're going to take part in a deep dive workshop. So there's going to be multiple workshops that we can sort of really explore different subject matter. Second round of innovation shorts are going to be happening. Then we're going to hear from a panel with all of our experts, and that'll be kind of the wrap of the summit. And then the after party at poll results. Let's see. Oh, the poll results? Yeah, I don't know. It might be a surprise. Oh, look at that, Ford Rosso. All right, coming in, the dark horse. Could come in. All right, we'll give it away. It is Forbidden Peak. It's going to be tonight at Forbidden Peak. What an amazing, great place that has become out here in Auk Bay, a real center of Auk Bay, kind of social life, but also, you can do great meetings there. They have a nice conference room. So Forbidden Peak is going to be where we're going to be having the after party. We want to thank Forbidden Peak and Local Frequency for making the party happen. So without further ado, we have a video welcome from Governor Dunleavy, and we'll throw it to that video welcome from Governor Dunleavy to the second day of the Innovation Summit.
Hello, and welcome to the 12th Annual Innovation Summit. I want to thank the Juneau Economic Development Council for the invitation to speak to you all today, and I want to thank all of you in attendance for working to move Alaska forward. We know we have to innovate in Alaska. Going back to the first residents of Alaska, innovation was critical to survival in our often harsh and demanding climate. That need to innovate is just as strong today, and events like this are an important part of turning innovation ideas into reality. We must innovate to grow and diversify our economy. We must innovate to lower our cost of energy and the way we produce energy to support our existing businesses and entrepreneurs and to attract new ones. Alaska is well positioned to be a global leader in all forms of innovation, from energy in all of its forms to electrified shipping and transportation to the rapidly growing industries like mariculture that are thriving here in Southeast Alaska and across coastal Alaska. Innovation is central to my vision for Alaska for the next 50 years and beyond, and I know it's yours as well. I envision an Alaska that is self-sufficient, that is secure in its supply of food and energy, an Alaska that's an exporter of finished goods and not just raw materials. Innovation through the connections and exchange of ideas at events like this is how we'll get there. I'll keep working to achieve this vision, and with the help of you and groups like yours, we'll turn this common vision into a reality. To those of you making your pitches, good luck, and I want to encourage you all to keep up the good work you're doing for today and for the future of our great state. So thank you for the invitation to speak with all of you today, and I wish you all the best for a successful and productive summit.
Thank you, Governor Dunleavy. I want to introduce next Brian Holst. Brian is, of course, the Executive Director of the Juneau Economic Development Council, who puts on the Innovation Summit, and Brian's going to make an introduction. Everyone, Brian. And let's, Brian really makes this thing happen, so let's hear it for Brian Holst.
Thanks, Andy. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. And big shout out to the staff of JEDC. I always feel awkward when I get giving too much credit when all of you know that it takes a huge team. Gina, who's been sick, thank you, Andy and Sierra. She was our MC, and she's still out there sending us emails, supporting us, but she's been stuck at home for the last 2 weeks. And thanks to a great community, we're able to grab people at the last second to help us out. So we really appreciate that. I'm proudly wearing my thank you. This is my UAS thing. I love wearing this because I go to places and people talk to me about UAS, and it always takes me a second to figure out why are they talking to me about that topic, because they assume I'm an employee of UAS. And I'm a supporter of UAS, and UAS, Chancellor Carey is on our board at JDC, and they are just incredibly generous to host the Innovation Summit this year. Thank you again, Chancellor, for your service. So I want to introduce our next speaker, which is a real pleasure. Part of what we're trying to do here is through the evolution of these few sessions is go from Nikhil, which talked to us about purpose, sort of explained the theory around this, why this is important, how this works in businesses at the global level. Yesterday we heard from Sarah Lukin about how this can work at a large organization in Alaska, and what larger organizations in Alaska we have than our native corporations. And today we're going to have the opportunity with Stephen to talk about what this looks like in a smaller business in Alaska. And then after that, Nikhil, we're going to have a workshop right here in this room to take these concepts and see how they can apply into our own businesses, our own organizations that we operate. But before that, we want to hear from the founder and CEO of Arctic Solar Ventures Corporation. Stephen Trimble's from Anchorage, Alaska. His firm supplies solar-powered products and services to homes and businesses connected to the power grid. Arctic Solar Ventures is a pioneer in the solar energy sector. He's also one of the few B corporations in Alaska, which we will learn about as well. So super excited that Stephen can join us this morning. Please join me in welcoming Stephen Trimble.
Mic check. How's this sound, everyone? Good? Can you hear me? All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Brian, thanks for the great introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm really thrilled to get to be here today. I'm going to move so I'm not double micing. Really thrilled to be here today with all of you to get to share a little bit of our story in Anchorage. And that story started in 2015 with an idea of how can we bring some economic activity around solar energy and the transition to clean forms of power production to Alaska in a bigger way. And through that process, we became the, at the time and still, second only B Corp in Alaska. And that's, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey to becoming a B Corp and what that means to us and ways that we've leveraged that to become more competitive and a better member of our community and the communities that we serve, and ultimately a stronger business because of it. We can switch to the next slide. Actually, do I have slide control up here with this? This is what this does? Fantastic. All right. So what the heck is a B Corp? I get that question all the time. And it's rarely conveyed in a understandable and brief way. This is the best definition I've found. It's very similar to what like fair trade is for coffee or what LEED certification is for a building. And what it is that we are a certified triple bottom line business, which means we take into account profit, the communities we work in, and basically the environment in our corporate decision-making process. And what's great is that it's very easy to say you do those things. It's a whole nother story to be held accountable to do those things by a third party. And that's what B Corp certification is all about. You have to prove that you do what you say. And so this is some information on the number of B Corps, and of course it's ever changing. This is from numbers from 2022 about how many there are in the world, operating in 15 countries, over 150 industries, and there's now over 5,000, I think it's up over 6 now actually, B Corps in the world. And the fascinating thing is that when you start to notice, and I bet you guys recognize some of these logos, B Corps are everywhere. They're all over the place, big and small. A lot of these companies are probably very familiar to you guys in the grocery stores, outdoor goods. King Arthur Flowers, one of my favorites. They're up there. So B Corps, big and small, all over the world. A lot of really innovative companies, without question. And so next time you guys are in the grocery store, look for the certified B logo, and you'll find it on a heck of a lot more than you would think. So I like to talk about B Corps as the, kind of the intersection of purpose and profit, because B Corps by definition are still for-profit businesses, not nonprofits. And so we have to meet a set of very high standards that are externally validated and compared and leveraged against our peers. And so that's done through the nonprofit certification body called B Lab, and they handle all B Corp certification around the world, and they have developed a process over the years. It's something called the B Impact Assessment. And so when you initially apply to become a B Corp, you have to take this assessment, and it's about 400 or 500 questions. It's a lot of questions. And it's in 4 kind of key topic areas about your business, which teaser we'll dive into later at 1:30 when we have our little breakout session about B Corp strategies. So you have to stick around for that. And it's basically a weighted scoring matrix through these, very long set of questions. And at the end of it, you get a score. And you have to maintain a minimum score to keep your B Corp certification. And then you're sort of ranked amongst other B Corps based off of that assessment score. And so we've been very blessed to be named in the top 10% of B Corps globally through our impact score, which is very exciting for Alaska, proving that this type of business can indeed work here and thrive. And I like to always talk about B Corp certification and what it means as a competitive advantage for doing business. And that competitive advantage is treating your community right, treating your state right, treating the customers you work with right, and treating your partners right. And it's just the basic idea that we can be better citizens by doing business in a better way. And that's the basic concept that drives it. And so some ways that we have specifically worked to implement this, which I'm going to talk about today, are we wrote a consumer code of ethics, which I'm very proud of. It was modeled after consumer ethics laws that were passed in Utah for the solar industry specifically. We formed a solar trade organization in Alaska, the first of its kind. The idea there that we can come together as competitors to advance common goals that elevate the industry across. We've participated in all aspects of policy in the industry. We decided very early on when entering a new space that if we were going to see the industry be successful and trend the way we wanted to, we would have to be involved in all aspects of it. So that's state, local policy, federal policy where applicable. And we're heavily involved in education. It's pretty incredible when you go into a grade school and you talk about energy and kids just go, yeah, solar, tidal. That's what they're thinking about. They're not talking about fossil fuels. They're talking about alternative energy, which is really amazing. And to me, this kind of centralizes around the concept of investing in your industry as a whole, leads to aggregated success. And you're helping your competition by doing that, but a rising tide lifts all boats, which matters. And when you talk about B Corp certification and sales, it's really about building credibility with your customers, because you want them to feel comfortable and safe and know that they're being taken care of in a way that they would want to be taken care of as well. So these are some global statistics on growth in sales related to B Corp brands. And you can see that they perform in the 90th percentile of sales, and they typically have, 3x faster sales growth than non-certified B Corps. And this is a quote from the CEO of Gaia Herbs about their experience. The thing that really stands out for me is simply selling a high-quality product is no longer enough. So what did we do? We had the great advantage of being able to go through B Corp certification when we were still a young business. It's much harder to change long-standing policies than it is to create the policies as you're forming them to match what your goals are trying to achieve. So that was a big benefit for us. I get questions from a lot of businesses that are exploring B Corp certification, and one of the hardest things is taking 10, 20 years of policy and practice and trying to change the way you do things. It's not easy. And so how B Corp certification kind of works and has been designed to be a companion of benefit corporation designation. So benefit corporations are basically the state legal framework for protecting your mission. And this was designed by the founders of B Lab to sort of be the next logical step of B Corp certification. So this is passed at the state level, and it becomes an entity type like C Corp, S Corp, LLC. You can literally click benefit corporation on your state business license. And what that does is it puts in state requirements to protect your mission from getting changed. We've tried to pass this in Alaska 3 times. If anyone wants to try it again, I'm ready for you. So what do we do without this? Or we just built it anyway. And how did we do that? Well, we incorporated benefits to our communities, the people we serve, and the environment into our bylaws, articles of incorporation, employee handbook, code of ethics, which I'll preview a little bit later, the evaluation of our supply chain and partners, our leave policies, everything. And it was easy for us to do this because we're a small business. So we just did it all anyway. And that's a central, sort of tenet of why we're all here and what innovation's all about. It's just about doing it and getting it done. And it basically permeates all aspects of your business, from transparency. We publish an annual impact report that talks about how our work impacts the communities we live and work in, and all the way through legal standards and into our IP. So again, the message there is just do it, and you can. As I mentioned before, rising tide lifts all boats. And so that's what we did, because we wanted to ensure the health and longevity of the industry. And the quickest impact way, and one of the most meaningful ways that we could think of doing that, was to build a consumer code of ethics and base it around membership in our trade organization. I'm happy to share this with anyone later. This is just a sample of the page. And it has to do with how we represent what we sell, how we represent ourselves in the community, how we design and build and install what we do, because we build products that are designed to last 30 years. So it's not a one and done situation. It requires an ongoing relationship. And this is the outcome of putting your customers first. They become your best advocates. It doesn't have to be us. We can certainly talk about what we do and why we think it's great. But it's a whole different story when someone else is telling that story for you. And again, in line with wanting to permeate all aspects of moving an industry forward in a responsible way, we decided to set our own standards before others did for us. That was an advantage we had as a young industry here in Alaska, is that we got to pick a lot of how we wanted our regulations to look and what we wanted them to be like. And what's the ultimate result for this and what you hope to achieve? You hope to position yourself as an authoritative source for ethical treatment in all aspects of your business, internal and external. And there's a lot of power in that statement and what that means. So remember I talked about no problem, we just did it, we built it, we innovated. That's great because we were able to do it, and we're a small business, and we're privately held, and we could adopt all those things and do them ourselves. But not all businesses can do that. So how do you create the situation where other businesses can participate and thrive? You got to go the full mile to get the benefit corporation designation set up. Because everything having to do with the B Corp legal standards is 100% voluntary. So you could take the B impact assessment, get a score, do the minimum amount of work, and still be a certified B Corp, which is fine, but for us, that's not enough. And so becoming a benefit corporation does in effect what we did, incorporating into our bylaws, articles of incorporation, et cetera, founding documents. And it protects your mission over time and changes of leadership and changes of ownership to ensure that you can indeed include community, environment, and human benefit in your mission and have it protected over time. One of the B Corp leaders in the world, Yvonne Chenard of Patagonia, has done some amazing things. Patagonia was a certified B Corp, and they became a benefit corporation. And this quote really epitomizes how it is designed to protect the mission of your business over time. So, we need to see more businesses doing this in Alaska. Because we're a testament to the results. And B Corp certification can span across all industries, all sectors of business. And we have a great unrealized opportunity here to continue to innovate and, most importantly, put Alaskans first and treat each other as neighbors and citizens in a sustainable way ourselves. So this was a high-level overview in a lot of ways, but I'm happy to talk more about specifics now or offline later, and we'll certainly learn more later this afternoon in the 1:30 breakout session about B Corp strategies. So thank you for having me. Thank you for welcoming me to Juneau. And I hope that we see much more solar energy here in the future as well. Thank you.
The governor gave us the gift of brevity in his comments, so we've got lots of time to ask Stephen questions and even have just a little bit of a discussion here. I've definitely got some notes and some questions, but let's first turn it to folks in the audience with any questions you might have about B Corps, about his specific experience, maybe in general about B Corps in Alaska and our region. Come on up here. And is this mic active, folks back there?
And if you speak in the mic, make sure that we can record.
Hi, I'm just curious. So, if you said it's not legally recognized in Alaska, right? We don't have B Corps here.
Benefit corporation designation. Yeah.
All right. At this point, who holds you accountable? Like, is there a B Corp designation in the federally, or how does that work?
The nonprofit B Lab does. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So it's designed. B Corp certification is designed to get certified businesses in place in states, and the logical progression of that is that they then strive to get benefit corporation designation passed in a state and become benefit corps, because that's the way that you can legally protect your mission beyond just doing it yourself. So it's sort of a two-stage process.
Could you turn around and show them in the back of your shirt?
Yeah, I sure can. Wait. This is our slogan. And it appeals to our largest customer demographic.
I think Daniel also wanted you to move away from the podium a little bit. I think we're getting some mic interference or something.
Okay.
Fantastic. So,
Thanks, Scott.
Stephen, thank you for being here today. I'm kind of curious because I saw your work back in 2015 when you were first making some presentations. You kind of went through the startup ecosystem world of starting to pitch your business. What is it that motivated you to begin with to take that journey? And what advice do you have for businesses now that might be thinking about taking that journey,
Yeah.
as you did, with kind of taking a lot of initiative because there wasn't a road built?
It was
And
not.
I guess kind of the third piece of this is, what should we in Alaska do to maybe nudge a few more businesses in the direction that you took?
Yeah, thanks, Kai. Well, it all started with a crazy idea of let's have solar power in Alaska, and everyone literally thought I was crazy. Because how does solar work when we have snow? Well, it does, believe it or not. And you kind of get to that point where, okay, you have an idea, you think it will work. You've made the rounds, you've started talking to people, you think this could have some legs, and you just have to do it, And there's a lot of thankless days, weeks, months, and years associated with that process. But you hope it will pay off, and you try to, be flexible and pivot as much as you can. A great story about that: when we started, we had this idea of sort of decentralized solar ownership, which was made very popular in the lower 48 by the leasing of solar PV systems. So you paid a monthly payment. The company owned the asset that built it. And the idea is that it lowers the barrier for customer entry because they don't need upfront capital. They just pay a monthly fee. And so we built a whole framework around that, spent a ton of money, and then we realized a big piece of that model is that the customer doesn't get to keep the federal tax incentive for solar, which for consumers is bad because that's one of the biggest drivers. So there's a 30% federal income tax credit for any solar customer when you build solar. And that model took that away. So we scrapped it and threw it all out. And we went back to an ownership model. And at that time, solar loans were becoming more popular. And we brought mechanisms online to do that. But to this day, 75% of our customers still pay cash, even though we have full loan capabilities with no real limitations. So for me, that was not what I anticipated. And we had to adopt and change and move around that nimbly to figure out what would best work for us here in Alaska. So yeah, I mean, you got to do it. You got to hold strong to your vision. You got to take a lot of licks in the process, and you've got to be able to make change when you see it and adapt quickly. Yeah. Hope that answered all the pieces of your questions, Kai.
I've got a question, Stephen, for you. As I was listening, I guess I'm sort of surprised that you ran into a lot of legislative barriers to getting a B Corp in Alaska. So I'm wondering, what are those barriers? What were they? Maybe just talk a little bit about the steps you took, and then further, what would be the advantage? Should we still try to pursue that? Should someone try to take up that? Is there an advantage to having that happen in Alaska?
Yeah, absolutely there is, and we absolutely should do it and need to do it. When we first tried to get this legislation passed, it was carried by Paul Seaton out of Homer, and it was right around the time when we were becoming certified as a B Corp. The other certified B Corp in Alaska is based in Cordova, and their name is Alaska Glacial Mud, and they became certified probably about a year before we did. And so the pushback at that time was why should we do this for two companies? You know, why do we need state legislation for two businesses? Where's the demand? So it fizzled on the vine because of that. And Paul tried it again, the next session, same result. And then Sam Keto picked it up from down here in Juneau. And we ran into a lot of problems describing it conceptually to get legislators to understand what it meant and what the benefit of it was. So same thing, fizzled out in committee, and that's the way it goes. So we need strong legislative champions that understand the value of this and what it could bring to Alaska business. And it's not just about what can be done for two businesses that are already in place. It's about what can be done through the power of this concept for the rest of Alaska business. And that's how we need to think about it. Yeah. So it should be done. It absolutely can be done. We need legislative champions that understand it and understand the benefit that it can bring. And beyond that, it's just the hard work of the mechanics of moving it through. Yeah.
Personal experience, Alaska Seaplanes uses a marketing firm that is a B Corp. It's based in Portland as for some of our marketing. And it really does go to the core of how every single person in that firm works with us and deals with us, and even the language they use. And it's pretty remarkable. And it was the first time I had really heard of it. And they were like, "Oh, we're a B Corp. We're a B Corp." I was like, "Well, what's a B Corp?" So I looked on their website and looked into it a little bit, and it really can you talk a little bit about that? How being a B Corp infuses your entire operation?
Yeah, absolutely. It permeates every single thing that we do, you know, and really it goes back to that quote about being an authoritative source for ethical treatment. And to me, it's all about that code of ethics. And the idea there is that if you treat your customers well, they're going to tell more people about that treatment and the way you do business. And it's going to attract more customers to the way you do business. And that reputation building has real lasting power that goes beyond just what you sell. And that's when you truly become, you know, a meaningful member of a community that contributes back to the community. And that in turn pays benefits back to you as a business as well. And so it's really a reciprocal sort of melded relationship that you have a, you know, closer closer connection to the people you serve, and a closer connection to the places you live and work in, and it permeates every aspect of what we do. You know, all the way from like one of the big areas of B Corp assessment is the ratio of lowest to highest paid worker, and what that ratio is. And ideally, you know, they like to have it under 4 to 1. So your highest paid employee should not make more than 4 times what your lowest paid employee does. And obviously every, you know, increment that you take that down, the better you score on that part of the assessment. And so we're very proud for us, that's 2.4, which is great. And half of our employees are also women, which we're very, very proud of as well.
I was going to say that, and we've got one more question here too, but I was going to say that, yeah, one thing that this firm I work with talks about a lot as far as being B Corp is recruitment and retention. I mean, it is a big draw, especially they're in the high tech sector. So for them to attract talent is a challenge every day.
Yeah.
And they find that having this kind of core ethic behind what they do really draws in great people, and it retains great people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Stephen, I was curious, how did you come across B Corp? It sounds like it wasn't, like it was early in your journey, but not maybe right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And like when you first heard about it, what was your reaction? Was it like an immediate, hey, I want to do this? Was there skepticism?
Yeah.
Because we come across a lot of B Corps, but some sort of immediately pick on, but then also find that the process to become a B Corp can be quite onerous. So could you talk a little bit about that too?
It is quite onerous. It takes certification, and recertification takes months. We're doing our 3rd recertification now, and we started it 5 months ago. So it's a very long process. So when we were thinking about what we wanted ASV to be and how we wanted to organize it and put it together, we had the great advantage of being able to look elsewhere in other states to see how solar has been done successfully. You know, like the great blessing we have in Alaska is that when we're trying to start new industries here, we have the ability to go out and look how it's been done in other places, and ideally pick the best of those ways of doing things, and hopefully here and execute. And so we started to find all these other solar B Corps around the country, and went, wait a minute, these businesses look like they're doing something right. There must be something to this. And then we found out that those solar B Corps formed a cooperative called the Amicus Solar Cooperative. And at its heart, it was a purchasing cooperative, meaning that all the member owners, so this cooperative, every company that is a member of it owns 1 share of stock in the cooperative. And we all have equal voting rights in the cooperative and what it does. And at its heart, it was designed to be a purchasing cooperative, meaning it can go to material manufacturers and say, hey, this is our 50 company combined annual volume. How can you guarantee us product that we can distribute to all of our members across North America? Well, we learned along the way that best practice sharing was the real silver bullet of becoming a cooperative, and none of our membership has any geographic overlap. So that's by design, so we have no problems sharing best practices and talking about the way we do business and what's been successful in our jurisdictions. And so as soon as we discovered that and applied to be, an owner of the cooperative, that's what really accelerated our growth, because all of a sudden we didn't have to just reach out and try to learn how other B Corps have done things other places. All of a sudden we giant group of peers that was willing and able to share with us how they did business and how they operated in the places that they operated. And we've leveraged that to our full advantage. Yeah. So it was sort of a combination of seeing the opportunity, seeing how it's been successful other places, and then getting plugged into a network of like companies that could further accelerate your growth. Great question.
Question is, when you try to raise capital, either from equity investors or from lenders, and you show them that your mission is triple bottom line, then how do they look at it? Or do they question that, or they're not going to be a good fit if they're also not triple bottom line, if they only care about one bottom line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. Luckily there is a lot of investment infrastructure that's formed around triple bottom line businesses specifically. But that can be a barrier to capital deployment and partners if they don't share those core values. Absolutely. So it can be self-limiting in some ways, for sure. But the hope and perseverance there is that you get matched up with the right potential funding partners that do share those values. So it can be limiting without a doubt. Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
And Stephen, thanks so much. That was fascinating, and I'm sure Stephen's available to talk more in depth and spread the gospel of of B Corps here. Once again, Stephen Trimble, thank you so much for your work here and for presenting that, founder and CEO of Arctic Solar Ventures Corporation. Well, I'm going to very quickly call Brian Holst back onto the stage. He's somewhere. He's going somewhere. He's coming around somewhere. Here he is. He's behind here. Brian.
Thank you, Andy. Does everyone see my shirt? Very proud of UAS. And so I just want to take a moment, and I meant to do it earlier, but now I can do it properly, is I'd like to call Chancellor Carey to the stage, please. Because as some of you may know, Chancellor Carey is retiring. And she has been an incredible asset to us here in Juneau and in Southeast Alaska. She took the position, she joined the University of Alaska Southeast in 2016. And then she became, I would say, somewhat reluctant, but she was appointed our interim chancellor, and then she was selected as chancellor. She couldn't turn it down, and she has done a remarkable job through a really, really challenging time at the University of Alaska Southeast. And I bet she has a little smidgen of regret that just when things start to finally seem like the university system's back on track, her timing of her retirement is such that she's going to get to watch a lot of it from the sidelines. But I just want everyone to please stand and give the most riotous standing ovation possible for our chancellor. Thank you, Andy.
For a university crowd, that was riotous. That was, wow. Thank you, and thank you, Chancellor Carey, for all your work. Yeah, it has been incredible work in a challenging time, and the reason, I think, why UAS is now in a good place is in large part because of your work, so thank you so much. I'm going to call back up to the stage Nikhil Bumb, who's the managing director of FSG. I'm going to call him back to the main stage here. We're going to do an interactive session, Purpose Playbook, the FSG strategy, operations, and people. And Nikhil, come on back up here, everyone. Nikhil Bumb.
Don't think I did this right.
Maybe I'll turn this this one off just so we don't get feedback.
All right. Is it working? There we go. All right. Perfect. I will not stand at the podium today because that gets old very quickly. And thank you, Stephen, for that introduction. I think the piece on B Corp and certification, it's hard, but it's so important because, as you said, it sort of permeates throughout. And a lot of people don't know this about FSG. This was not planned, but we used to be a for-profit company, and then we became a nonprofit because we thought that that would actually align our incentives more with the impact that we're trying to have in the world. And we found it to be true, and it became a lot easier to say no to the cigarette companies that were coming to us, tobacco companies that were coming to us asking us to work on their corporate social responsibility programs when we changed our incentive structure. So anyways, yesterday you heard me talk about purpose and why it's important, and what we didn't get to was that we have put out a playbook on how to actually get started and integrate purpose into your organization and actually use it to start driving your strategy and the way you operate and the way you treat your people, but all the things that Stephen was talking to. So we wanted to do a workshop around actually putting it into practice. And so I will just speak for a little bit to introduce it, and then we have a number of facilitators around the room, and we're going to give you all a chance to actually just dive in and start putting it to practice. So there are some worksheets at your table that we'll get into in a little bit, so if you'll just bear with me a little bit more. All right, so quick reminder, quick recap, in case you missed it yesterday, that we talked a lot about purpose and why it's important, and the change in the landscape of stakeholder expectations coming from a number of different groups, whether that's your customers, your employees, communities, and investors. Everyone's demanding that companies start thinking more about purpose beyond just creating profits. Not to say to move away from profits, but how do you think beyond profits as well? And so with that in mind, we know that this is something to do, but it's harder than just putting out a purpose statement. You actually start having to think about how to integrate it into your business model, how to make sure that the impact that you're having in communities, yes, it can happen through your philanthropic programs, through your community giving, but what are the other ways that you can also have that in a way that drives advantage and distinction for your organization? So that's really what we want to get into today. So yesterday, I know most of the examples I used were pretty large companies, and they're companies that are also not all local or might feel a little bit out of reach, especially if you're sort of starting up a new business or you're a small organization. I'm going to give another example, and this is sort of live overnight, change something, but I want to tell an example of a company called Sanovation. And so I came across Sanovation back in 2014, 2015. There was a social enterprise incubator called Halcyon in the Washington, D.C. area, and Sanovation was a member of them. And at that point, I was advising a number of the social enterprises that were going through this program. And the reason I got linked up with Sanovation is because one of the founders also is a Georgia Tech alum, and I did a round of grad school at Georgia Tech. And their whole concept is thinking about the sanitation space. And the unmet need that they're really trying to solve is how to make sanitation more affordable and more accessible and more safe for people around the world. And so where they really focus is, and this is a little bit about their model, they've actually updated this graphic, but I went back to one of the graphics that we created when we were working together and pulled this from the archives. But their whole model is they work primarily in refugee camps and they work in urban slums or peri-urban slums. And places where sanitation around the world is either unsafe, often folks are doing open defecation. I know I'm saying things that are lovely first thing in the morning, but you know, these are problems that are real around the world. And they wanted to think about how to actually make that more accessible. And so sometimes the solution is to have public toilets, but that's also not safe, and it's particularly not safe from a gender perspective. So the model that they came up with is they engineered these toilets that are actually portable and that they can go around and install in people's houses, but not as permanent installations. So if there's a servicing problem, they can service it. And their model went beyond. They then took that and decided, well, we don't want to just think about the sanitation problem. We also want to think about the environmental issue and try to see how we can think about that. So, because now they need to think about, if you've installed the toilets, what are you going to do with the waste? And so then they go around and they have their employees, their service representatives, both treat and service the toilets whenever there are issues with the toilets, but they also collect the waste. This is getting even more interesting. They collect the waste, and they take this waste to a treatment plant, and then they transform it into fuel. So they take human feces and transform it into fuel, and they sell that fuel out in the market. They sell that to restaurants, they sell that to consumers, they send that to other commercial businesses. And you're probably thinking, why is anyone buying this? It turns out that these briquettes that they make of the fuel have a much lower carbon footprint. I'm seeing some heads nodding, so people are familiar with this model, have a much lower carbon footprint than what people are traditionally using, charcoal, and they actually produce less harmful chemicals that, for the human body. So there are several things now that they're solving and are now being able to put into it's affordable, so they could sell it cheaper, and it's also better for the human health and for environmental health. So going back to that One Health concept that we were talking about yesterday. So these are the founders, Andrew and Emily, and in their hands, these are briquettes made of human feces. So that have been treated properly and are now safe. So just wanted to share that of a small organization, a social enterprise that started up really with purpose at their core, and how they took it and turned it into strategy, turned it into a business model. They've been pretty successful. They actually, both Emily and Andrew moved out to Kenya, which is a market that they started in, and they have scaled to a number of sites in Kenya. They're now actually scaling outside of Kenya. They've had partnerships with the government. They've helped change some policy. They've also, the folks that they employ through their service model, their service representative model, are all workers from the from the slums or the refugee camps, folks who have issues getting employment otherwise, and so they're solving multiple now social and environmental issues through their model, and they've been able to scale this. So this is, it can sound daunting, and certainly the journey of many years that they've had, but they always stay true to that purpose and thinking about how to use that as a source of competitive advantage. So that's really what we want to get to today. So in this workshop, I'm going to introduce a few of the things from the Purpose Playbook. I'll try to stay away from that. I'm going to we talk about 5 elements, and then we also talk about 9 practices in the Purpose Playbook. So I'll walk you through those, and then I'd like for everyone to start applying those to your organizations. Because we only have so much time today, we're just going to focus on the first 3 practices of the 9. So those are the ones dealing with strategy. And hopefully in that, you'll be able to start seeing how shared value can be applied to your organization and maybe even identify an early stage shared value opportunity. So that's really the goal for today. How does that sound? Awesome. Great. So I'm going to try to stay on time and speak for about 15 more minutes. Then we'll spend nearly an hour in breakout groups, and then we'll come back to a short debrief and wrap up. Okay, so to start off with, if everyone can see in your, everyone should have a worksheet in front of you. Did everyone get worksheets? I saw Daniel passing them out at the different tables. So there should be worksheets at your table. If you need more, just raise your hand, and hopefully Daniel or Martina or someone will come by with them. And just take a few minutes and answer the first 2 questions on the back. So the front just gives you a little bit of an introduction. The back is all the questions. And I want you to just answer the first 2. What would you say your company's purpose is, or your organization if you're not here from a for-profit organization? What is your organization's purpose? If you don't feel like you have a defined purpose, think about what we would like your purpose to be. And then the second part of this is, if you fulfill your purpose, the world will, right? So what's that future state vision? What is the social and environmental issue you're trying to solve? Just take a minute or 2, and then we're going to ask for 1 or 2 volunteers to share. All right. Who would like to share? Go ahead. Sorry.
So I work for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Sound Science Center. I would say our purpose is science research and science education. And if we fulfill our
All right. I like that. One more. Go ahead.
For the credit union, purpose is to promote financial well-being, and if we fill our purpose, the world will financially thrive.
Financially thrive. All right. Great. Good. All right. Keep those in mind. Actually complete the exercise, even if you didn't share, because this is going to be the first thing you do in your breakout groups is you're going to share with your breakout partners. So thank you all for also the two of you who volunteered to share with the full group. All right, let me tell you a little bit more about the purpose playbook. It's really focused on the how, right? So your purpose helps you define your why. The playbook is helping you actually put it into practice. So it's really focused on the how. And we did not develop it ourselves. I will say that it was actually almost a 20-month process of actually going out and speaking to people that are regularly doing this in companies about what are the challenges as they actually start to bring their purpose to life. You might have defined your purpose, but what actually happens when you define it? So we developed it in partnership with them, and we went back and iterated on this a few times. And so we wanted to do something that FSG has often been accused of in the past, is we put out things in the world, and they're very academic, and they're not super practical. There's a nice concept out there, and we need to actually get better about helping it be more practical. And so what we did is we decided that this wasn't going to be a 20-page book that was all about great literature. It was going to be a practical set of tools, and so it's meant to be a workbook as well. And so you'll see some examples, you'll see other things as well in there. But there is still a little bit of theory in there. And so the first thing I told you that we would do is we talk about the 5 elements and the 9 practices. So what does that actually look like? We've talked about purpose, and so in the center of everything should be, for your organization, your purpose. As Stephen said, it really should guide everything that you're trying to do. But we know that purpose by itself is not enough. And so the second element is culture, and that purpose really should sit in this container. Your culture sets the container for how you actually start to then bring your purpose to life. And if it isn't represented in your culture, that's your first problem. If your culture does not match up with your purpose, if your culture is not something that can help you hold yourself also accountable to it, then the box falls apart. There is no container. The third element is strategy. We're going to talk a lot about that today. You need to be able to actually then start to define how you're going to act on your purpose. It's backed up by operations. That's what now putting it into practice, thinking about how you're going to measure, who you're going to partner with, what are the activities that you're going to do. And then finally, your people. So the best shared value companies, the best purpose companies are actively hiring for that kind of talent that resonates with that purpose, they're using that in the hiring process to screen for those factors that are important as well. And as we also heard, again, Stephen say, it really can be a tool for retention and retainment as well. For each of those last 3 elements, there are a set of 3 practices. So in strategy, we start with talking about opportunity identification. How does that become a source of a distinction? And then how do you actually set strategic plans around it? But then you also need to think about operations, right? So once you do that, how is that going to actually help you innovate? What are your innovation processes? And what does that lead in terms of scale? Then what do you think about in terms of partnerships? So that's really new models of cooperation. And then ultimately, how are you measuring? Measurement is a place that I'll say I've seen almost every company struggle with. So I really appreciated yesterday when Sarah was talking about how they set objectives and they hold themselves accountable to it. And it's also important to do that, thinking about your impact externally as well. You've defined a social and environmental need, so not just internally how you're holding yourself accountable, but what are you thinking about in terms of externally and how you're thinking about an output versus an outcome and how you're going to measure those differently. And then people. So you want to think about how you design your organization. Does it match the way that you're talking about things in your purpose? Is it supported by that, or is it sort of traditional business structure and that may or may not work for the purpose that you have? How do you acquire your talent? How do you develop your talent? And then ultimately, how do you also think about your engagement with your various stakeholders and your communication? So that's the Purpose Playbook. It's publicly available if you want it. Brian has linked to it. The JEDC has linked to it on the website as well. And like I said, we tried to be a little bit more practical with this guide. So we've defined the various practices. We've also included a set of examples, and then there's a workbook of exercises as well. So some questions to start helping you get put these practices in, and bring them alive in your organizations. So a quick reminder on shared value, and then I'm going, well, first on the purpose playbook, shared value from yesterday, and then I'm going to talk about the 3 strategy practices, and then we'll start. We'll get into our breakout groups. So you'll remember yesterday we talked about the purpose portfolio. So purpose needs to live in all parts of your organization. Hopefully that was very obvious from the 9 practices we just talked about. It's not just how you set your strategy. It's not just your plans. It also needs to be evident in your operations. It needs to be thriving in your culture, and it needs to be evident in the way that you treat your people internally and your communities externally, your stakeholders as well. So that happens through a number of dimensions. But yesterday we also talked about shared value, and that's really that piece around being a powerful force for putting that purpose into practice and helping you achieve scale, being the economic engine of growth for your organization and helping drive your competitive advantage and profitability. You'll remember that then companies can create shared value in one of 3 ways. It often starts at that center core of an innovative product or service, thinking about a new market, thinking about how you're going to get to that new market, and that starts to then go into redefining productivity in your value chains. Where are there social and environmental issues in your value chain that you can actually start to solve that will both help unlock parts of the barriers that you may be seeing as an organization and therefore help you scale. And then ultimately also thinking about how you can create shared value by making changes in the wider business environment or the ecosystem. So, the strategy practices. This is where we're going to focus today. We're not going to do all 9. We're going to just do the first 3. And I'm going to go back to the Sanivation example and talk a little bit about how this process went for them. And actually, this playbook only came out in 2020. And like I said, I came across Sanivation in 2014. And they had already been noodling on the idea for a year or 2. So like I said, these aren't necessarily new concepts. These are concepts that have been around. We just helped put a little pen to paper by drawing from learnings from a number of different organizations. So the first part of strategy, practice number 1, opportunities identification. This, and we break this apart in 3 different segments for a couple of reasons. One, we are all very, I think, ambitious, as what did Sarah say yesterday? We're all anal retentive folks who are high achievers, something to that effect. It's very easy to want to jump to the end. What is the problem we're going to solve? How are we going to solve it? And this is what we're going to do out in the world. But because these are large, complex issues, unmet societal needs, they're things that if they were easy, somebody would have already solved them. Find it important to sort of break it down. So step 1 is just to identify what is the problem that you're trying to solve. What is the real need? And so in Sanivation, where they started was 2 problems. 1, they wanted to address sanitation, and 2, they wanted to have more affordable, they wanted to have a lower environmental impact of sanitation as well. Then they started thinking about, okay, now they've identified their opportunity, they've thought about the unmet social need. In this process, you also think about what's going to be material for your organization. What then are things that are going to be really important for your organization to be able to deliver on your model that are affecting it? Where are what's the intersection between these social issues and how you're going to do business? So when they were doing that, they realized that, well, ultimately we're going to need some we need people to trust us in these communities to actually then take these toilets, right? They were 2 foreigners coming in with a team of additional foreigners to take these toilets that they were not, when sanitation was already an issue of safety in these communities, to actually trust them. So, and they needed staff. They needed staff to go sell these toilets, go service these toilets. So then they started thinking about, oh, well, there are other issues related to these core issues that we have, and how can we start to solve them? And that gets into practice number 2. How do you start turning that into a source of distinction for your organization? And for them, what that meant is, as you'll remember from the model, well, 1, we know that there's an issue of workforce and employment opportunities, economic opportunities in these communities. But if the community members are receiving these toilets from their own people that they recognize, that they know, that they have trusted relationships with, they're going to have trust in Sanivation as well. And that really worked for them. So it became an issue of where there could have been mistrust. They actually turned it into trust, and it ended up becoming a source of distinction for them. So actually, Emily and Andrew only went out to do site visits every now and then, they almost never were actually out in the communities selling the toilets or servicing the toilets. They were training staff, they were finding staff, and then sending them out to actually go do it and establish relationships. They understood the communities better. They could identify the needs. They could bring that back to Emily and Andrew and their teams and think about, together, how can they solve this problem? And that turned into a real source of competitive advantage for them. Not just within the communities, ultimately when they worked with the government or other development agencies, they really liked this idea of building with the communities, not for the communities. And then finally you have to start to put that into action and thinking about, well, now that you have identified this problem, you've identified how you're going to turn it into a source of advantage for your organization, how are you actually going to deliver on that? We all sort of just go out there and start doing, but coming up with a plan and actually thinking about the resources you need to deliver on that is really important. And so the third practice is really about setting those strategic plans. You will also in that need to think about how you're going to create feedback loops to then adjust those plans as well, and that's really important too. So that's a really brief overview of the 3 practices, and now I think, hey, I'm doing really well on time. We are right on time, so we're going to go into our breakout groups, and if I can have all the facilitators raise their hands. Awesome. Could I ask that there be 1 facilitator at every table? So I see a couple of 2 facilitators at a table, so if there's a table without a facilitator, we'll ask one of you to move to those. And then we're all just going to... Sure, yeah, or feel free to move around. So again, maybe facilitators, just keep your hands up, and then you can sort of keep your groups as your tables, or you can move around and mix it up. Get to know some new folks.